Here we go. Week 11. It's 49ers Seahawks part 2 in 2024. The 4-5 Seahawks visiting the 5-4 San Francisco 49ers. Biggest storylines, key matchups, and the paths to victory for the 49ers and the Seahawks in this week 11 crossover coming at you right now.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to another Locked On Podcast Network crossover. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker here of Locked On 49ers, along with Corbin Smith, the host of Locked On Seahawks. It's the Locked On 49ers, Locked On Seahawks, Week 11 crossover. Get into the biggest storylines, the key matchups, and how this game could unfold for both of these teams to become victorious in Week 11. Today's episode of Crossover Thursday, as all Crossover Thursdays are, is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app and use code LOCKEDONNFL to win $50 instantly when you play just $5 at Prize Picks. Corbin, how are you? The Seahawks on a little bit of a skid right now, and just as we all predicted, and I remember our NFC West predictions episode, we all had everybody looking up at the Arizona Cardinals after 10 weeks of the NFL season, right? So what's going on? What's the biggest storyline there in Seattle?
Well, you might remember when we did the preseason show, though, that I said Arizona was the dark horse to watch. They just actually eclipsed what I expected to see, and quite frankly, all three other teams in the division have been worse than I thought that they were going to be up to this point. But as far as the Seahawks go, they're hoping that having a bye week to lick their wounds, that maybe, just maybe, they can get back to playing some winning football, which, yeah, they won 3 games ago, but it feels like they haven't won since the end of September because they have been playing abysmal football in all 3 phases for the most part. So it's been tough to watch in the Pacific Northwest.
It has been tough, but in the Rams game, there definitely was a bright spot, Jackson Smith-Njigba. How has his season been going for him? I mean, there's been some guys kind of banged up at the receiver position, DK Metcalf out of the lineup, but Smith-Njigba, it seems like he's really taking that next step for the Seattle Seahawks.
It's been so refreshing, Croc, to see Jackson Smith-Njigba run more than 5-yard crossers. That's all Shane Waldron did with him last year. And poor Shane Waldron now's had 2 pink slips here in less than a year, but just not maximizing his talent. Now, is he DK Metcalf as a deep target? No, that's not the biggest strength in his game, but he is more than capable of doing damage downfield. And the Rams figured that out very quickly. I believe he had 4 catches over 24 yards in that game, and he could have had 2 more that were called back by penalties against rookie Mike Jarrell. So he could have had 250 receiving yards in that game against the Rams. So yes, he was the bright spot, and the Seahawks are hoping they're going to have DK Metcalf back in the lineup with him for this game on Sunday. Really good news on Wednesday coming out of the VMAC. The Seahawks, Mike McDonald said earlier today, DK Metcalf's going to be limited. He was a full participant at practice yesterday. That bodes really well for his chance to play in this game. So as far as a key storyline there, getting DK Metcalf back, getting Abraham Lucas back at right tackle. He hasn't played all year long, coming off of knee surgery this offseason. If they have both those guys in the lineup ready to rock, obviously that's going to dramatically improve their chances, especially Lucas. As bad as this offensive line has been, they were down to their 4th string right tackle. It's going to be nice to have an actual starter out there, albeit his first game action. There could be some rust, but having him available to go against Nick Bosa, to me, the health of this team coming out of the bye, that's the biggest storyline for the Seahawks right now. And you got to hope you can stay healthy. They haven't been full strength in that offensive line all year. You're hoping you can have several games at least where you can get Abe Lucas back into it. And maybe, just maybe, the Seahawks can actually run the ball and they can actually protect Geno Smith a little bit.
Oh, I'll take a rusty Abraham Lucas at right tackle all day versus what we saw last time the 49ers faced the Seahawks with what they had going on at right tackle and going on up front. That's a big reason why the 49ers won that football game. Look, Seahawks 49ers important in Santa Clara in Week 11, but more importantly to my fantasy team, is that going to hurt JSN now with DK Metcalf potentially coming back, or is he here to stay with maybe a little bigger target share than he's had in this offense?
He should be the biggest target share. I mean, he's leading the team in receptions by a wide margin. He's leading the NFL in receptions from the slot. So the production has been there. Touchdowns have not been in general. And I know a lot of fans are upset at Geno Smith about that, but like, have you watched this offensive line? I mean, it's
Not a lot of time.
extremely difficult to operate, and somehow he is near the bottom of the league in pressure to sack percentage. But I digress. That pressure has made it difficult, and there have been a few games where Jack Smith-Njigba has kind of gone AWOL, but he should continue to be a high-volume target. I mean, this is the number one passing team in the NFL in terms of attempts. I don't expect that's going to change that much coming out of the bye, just out of necessity. They're going to keep winging it. So fantasy owners, look, I'm not a fantasy player, but DK Metcalf and Jack Smith-Njigba should both have plenty of value moving forward.
Something we've seen too with DK Metcalf against San Francisco 49ers, the Charvarius Ward has kind of shadowed him, and that's been a really good matchup. And it's usually gone in favor of the 49ers recently since they started doing that. And he doesn't shadow really anybody else in the league. We've seen it a couple times, but right now, Charvarius Ward sadly dealing with the death of his 2-year-old daughter, and he didn't play last week, and he's still not back with the team. So it's still unclear whether or not he's going to be out there and play. So we might see a lot of rookie Renardo Green, who's been phenomenal for the 49ers, but that might tilt things a little bit more toward the Seattle Seahawks side. If you get a guy back and the 49ers don't have one of their guys in the back end to obviously cover up a team that throws the ball as much as anybody in the NFL. Croc, what would you say is the biggest storyline for the San Francisco 49ers coming into week 11?
I think the 49ers are starting to get a little bit healthier. And as we saw in this last game, you had Christian McCaffrey back and the 49ers utilizing him. And I think moving forward, it's really watching him. As I was watching the 49ers game against Tampa Bay Buccaneers, every time Christian McCaffrey got the ball, he gets tackled, he gets up. I'm looking at him walk back to the huddle. Is that Achilles fine? Is he okay? But obviously the usage is still there. They handed the ball off. He didn't have a great game on the ground. Obviously made some explosive plays through the air. I think getting Christian McCaffrey back, a guy who clearly wasn't there in their first matchup against the Seattle Seahawks.
And I don't think we've even seen the maximum, it was nice to have Christian McCaffrey back, but I don't even think we saw what we even all the benefits of what Christian McCaffrey is going to bring for the 49ers if he continues to get a little bit healthier. And, it was hard to tell whether is he 100%, is he not 100%. They bottled up the run really well against the San Francisco 49ers, but just having him on the field and, everything going on when in his orbit and how closely teams pay attention to him, and it opens up things for other players. And we saw that with the 49ers offense, even though it didn't completely fix all of their red zone woes, as we saw with them attempting 6 field goals, 3 of them missed for the 49ers. I think we might have to talk about some special teams here in this episode as well with this matchup. But it was really good for the 49ers to get him back and be a little bit closer to full strength and watch Brock Purdy operate with a little bit more of a full package at his disposal in the passing game. And Purdy was awesome, I think, for the 49ers last week as well. And there was a really good JT O'Sullivan breakdown, the QB school of just how good Purdy was in week 10, which bodes really well for the 49ers to be getting someone like Christian McCaffrey back mid-season. They didn't make any big moves at the trade deadline, but that's about as big a move as you can have in the NFL to add someone like that and drop that into your offense around week 10 of the season. Next, let's get into some key matchups here with the 49ers and the Seahawks in week 11 and what those paths to victory might look like for both the Seahawks and the 49ers Sunday. Next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers and Locked On Seahawks is brought to you by Hillsdale College. And time is our most precious commodity. So don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely and improve yourself? Well, our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses, including history, economics, the great works of literature. And all of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced so that you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. So Hillsdale College, more than 40 free online courses. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. hillsdale.edu/lockedon. And the next segment of this crossover episode brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, including 49ers Seahawks. And right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the Niners and the Seahawks, all in one place. Live in-game betting, tons of weekly lines every single week in the NFL, props, who's the next coach to get fired, who's going to be coach of the year, who's going to win the Super Bowl, NFL draft props, and so much more. Of course, NBA, NHL, and every sport imaginable. You can get in on all the action at FanDuel. And by the way, when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you're watching Niners Seahawks on Sunday, and you think, hey, maybe I'll check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more. You can find it all on the very same page where you place your bets at FanDuel.com. So join today. Download the app. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Corbin. Niners, Seahawks. It's always fun. I thought this would be more of a battle for first place. Right now, it's a battle to get a little bit closer to the idle Cardinals. The Cardinals right now are on a bye week in week 11. So the 49ers can tie up the Cardinals at the top. The Niners do need to win some division games, though. You need those tiebreakers. You need some conference victories if you're the San Francisco 49ers, especially in the Seahawks too. You know, if you're not going to win the division, you're going to try to get one of those wild card spots. The NFC is very, very, very tightly contested this year. So obviously this is an important matchup. What matchup on the field are you looking closest at, Corbin, in Niners Seahawks this week?
On offense, you clearly got to look. Abraham Lucas is not getting a soft landing spot at his first game back. They're going to throw him into the lineup, and I'm expecting he's not going to play every snap coming back from the PUP list. They're going to rotate probably rookie Mike Jarrell in some with him, but he's going to be starting for the first time in almost a calendar year. And hey, congrats. Your first game, you get to go against Nick Bosa for most of the snaps. Bosa spends most of his time over there going against the right tackle. So that is going to be the matchup to watch. And obviously the rest of Seattle's offensive line is going to need to step up and play well in this game. But Abraham Lucas has a decent track record against Nick Bosa. He's had a couple games he struggled against him, but he's had a couple games he's held up fairly well against him, including in the playoffs a few years ago, where Bosa was pretty darn quiet for most of that game. And it was because of Abraham Lucas. And I think maybe the biggest impact that he brings to this team, the Seahawks have not been able to consistently run the football this year. And I think Ryan Grubb has wanted to run the ball a little bit more than he has. It just hasn't been working. So they've had to drop back and sling the ball. Abraham Lucas brings some nastiness and physicality to this offensive line in the run game that they have been badly missing. So if he can get after it a little bit in the run game and slow down the pass rush that way, they have a little more balance to go with Geno Smith. Obviously, it's going to make things much easier for them to be able to move the football and have a chance to win this game. And as for the defensive side of the ball, Seattle did something that very few people expected. I actually was not that surprised by this, but they released one of their starting linebackers coming out of the bye. Tyrell Dodson was waived on Monday, and they're throwing a rookie, Tyrese Knight, into the starting lineup to go with Ernest Jones, who's a familiar face for 49ers fans all those years that he played for the Rams. So Seattle's got a completely retooled linebacking group to go against Christian McCaffrey. Now, they started Tyrell Dodson in that game in week 6 when the 49ers ran for 228 rushing yards. That was some of the worst linebacker tape against the run that I have seen. So Tyrese Knight, the bar's pretty low right now. Can you go out and can you play your gaps? That's the first thing. And can you finish your tackles? And that's something this kid's done since college. So I'm really excited to see what he does stepping into the lineup. He started 2 games earlier this year and played pretty well in those games, but now this is a second half audition for him to maybe be a long-term starter. And like Abe Lucas, you don't get a soft land and get to deal with Christian McCaffrey in the 49ers offense in your first start after earning this opportunity.
Linebackers is where Kyle Shanahan loves to target. You know, starts with the run game, but it extends to the passing game and throwing over the middle of the field. So it's a big ask for the new look linebackers there for the Seattle Seahawks. And you mentioned Ryan Grubb there, and I want to follow up on the offense. And look, it's a really young coaching staff. Obviously, McDonald, young coach, first time head coach. And, you know, hadn't even been in the NFL a long time as a coordinator either. And then Ryan Grubb getting his first shot as well to call plays in the NFL. Do you think there's been some growing pains with the young coaching staff? And were you surprised they didn't have maybe some older, wiser, wily veteran coaches brought into this coaching staff? And do you think that's something that either has hindered them or can help them down the stretch and potentially you get better, not because of personnel, but just because of a coaching staff that's had a run through the league a little bit?
Yeah, Ryan Grubb, I think of the coaches that you just mentioned there, is probably the one that's had the biggest growing pains because at Washington, he had the more award-winning offensive line. So he could drop back and throw 80+% of the time if he wanted to, and he could get away with it. he's found out very quickly in the NFL that is a recipe for disaster. And it's put Geno Smith in some really bad spots this year where he's had to put more on his shoulders than I think any quarterback should be asked to do. I think that learning, and we'll see what he does coming out of the bye week with some self-reflection. He's a really smart guy. Look at those first 9 games and figure out, okay, this is what I've done well. This is what I've done wrong. I feel like on offense, they could have done a better job bringing in a seasoned coach to work with Ryan Grubb and Scott Huff, who is a first-time NFL offensive line coach. They have a lot of inexperience. They do have Leslie Frazier on defense, and I feel like the defense has made more adjustments as of late, but the offense seems like they're lagging behind a little bit there. So I'm wondering if they would have been better served to have a Leslie Frazier type coach on the offensive side of the football too.
Key matchups, Croc. What's the number one matchup you're looking for Sunday with the Niners against the Seahawks?
Yeah, I think Kenneth Walker against his 49ers defense. In the first matchup, he didn't fare too well. 14 carries for 32 yards. Then you look in the passing game. They did try to get the ball to him out in space. 8 targets, 8 catches, but for only 37 yards. So you combine those, obviously on paper, it looks like, he's hovering around 60 yards for the entire game, but he touched the ball an awful lot for such low production. And we know the more you kind of stop that run game a little bit, you're going to force Geno Smith to maybe have to try to play besides himself, make certain throws consistently. I watched him against that Rams game. I thought on those drives to score where he had to score, maybe try to force overtime, he made some beautiful throws down the stretch. But also we saw some opportunities where the more he's throwing the ball can kind of get put in harm's way. Now, one of them, his arm was hit. Another one, it looked like it went off of a guy's hands. Another one, maybe a guy ran the wrong route. But nonetheless, the more you make him throw, the more you open up opportunities for the 49ers to take advantage of, potentially getting a takeaway. So what does Kenneth Walker look like against the 49ers this season so far? It's kind of been up and down with his ability to run. I know Corbin talked about Abraham Lucas coming back. Maybe that makes the difference, but so far that is the matchup I'm looking to see. Kenneth Walker against the 49ers defense.
What is the reason, Corbin, the Seahawks haven't been able to run the ball very well and have gone so pass happy?
I keep bringing it up, but the offensive line's just been terrible. I mean, Charles Cross has been okay. He has not been great by any means, but he looks like Walter Jones out there compared to the rest of this offensive line. I mean, they've got a right guard in Anthony Bradford that leads the league in penalties and sacks allowed. Those are 2 categories you don't want to be leading the league in. And Connor Williams has been a disappointment. I thought he was going to be a huge upgrade at center. He has not played up to his usual level so far. He's had a lot of issues with snapping, which in a shotgun-heavy offense, that's not good either. So they've had a lot of issues on that offensive line. They've been down to their 4th-string right tackle, so getting Abe Lucas back is going to help. I also think it seems like there's been some disconnect. As an X's and O's guy, you expect offensive linemen to be able to roll out of bed and know how to run pin and pull or be able to run power, but it just seems like there's been schematic disconnect with that offensive line all year. And they don't seem like I'm going to be honest, they don't seem like they're very well coached on the run game stuff. So you add in the fact the O-line can't block, can create push vertically or horizontally. And then you add on the fact that conceptually, it seems like guys are not on the same page a lot of the time. It's pretty darn hard to run the football in the NFL when you have those 2 things combining.
My favorite matchup is the Hyena, the newly paid cornerback for the San Francisco 49ers, Diamador Lenore. I think he's going to get more recognition now around the league because his play has been really well he's been playing really well the last couple of years, and a lot of people maybe don't know his name. And now that he gets a nice big contract, 5 years, $92 million, around 18 mil per. We'll see what the actual numbers are. I haven't seen the official numbers yet from that. It's usually a little inflated from the agents right away, but really good contract for a guy who can not only play outside at corner, but thrives as a nickel guy. And if you're going to go 3 wide a lot and you're going to spread it out and you're going to throw the ball a lot, Jackson Smith and Jigba versus Diamador Lenore, the Hyena, that's going to be a fun matchup. And if he's he's the most highly targeted player in that offense. And to be honest with you, I liked what I saw from Renardo Green against DK Metcalf and against those Seattle Seahawks the first time these teams matched up, even if Charvarius Ward can't play. So that's what I'm looking for. Now he's gotten paid. What's it going to look like for Diamador Lenore? And I think he's going to be just fine. But Jackson Smith and Jigba, obviously, stock rising as well. And I wouldn't be mad if he scored a touchdown as long as the 49ers score more touchdowns for my listeners, because he is in my fantasy team, by the way, if I didn't mention that already.
I have DK Metcalf in mind. So.
Oh, do you? Okay, well, he's going to get shut.
Listen, guys, let them both score. And, and if the Seahawks win, at least your fantasy teams did well.
That's true. One or the other. Let's go Seahawks heavy on the fantasy team, and then we'll see what happens in reality. And you're okay if if it goes south with your fantasy team. And next, guys, let's talk path to victory. Let's paint a picture of what this game could look like Sunday between the San Francisco 49ers and the Seattle Seahawks next. This Crossover Thursday episode, as all Crossover Thursdays are, is brought to you by Prize Picks, daily fantasy made easy. Love Prize Picks. It is so fun and it is so easy. How easy is it? Well, all you do is you pick 2 or more players and you're playing against those stat projections at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get in on all the sports actions in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, Texas, and Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup alive. And let's say you think Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to go more than on his projected receptions. Well, there you go. And you pick another player, say Christian McCaffrey. You think he's going to go bonkers against this new look linebacker group for the Seattle Seahawks. That's all you got to do is pick 2 or more. You can mix it up with other players around the league. You think Justin Jefferson's going to have more than 83.5 receiving yards. There you go. And by the way, you can have hot takes, cook up takes with your friends, and we'll win real money this football season with your crew and run your game on Prize Picks. And when you download the app, you get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup with code LOCKEDONNFL. That is code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup at Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, let's get artistic with this. Corbin, paint me a picture. What's it look like? What does the Seattle Seahawks victory look like in Week 11? Because it's getting pretty close to do or die time for the Seahawks, and you can't start falling too far behind. There's too many teams to jump, not only in the division, but in the NFC wild card as well. And I know the 49ers fans out there would love to think that they put away the Seahawks here in Week 11 after sweeping them for the season series. So what do the Seahawks have to do? What does a victory look like for Seattle on Sunday?
Look, I could sit here and talk all kinds of X's and O's and different schematic stuff, but listen, at the end of the day, the 49ers have physically beat the Seahawks down in the 6-game winning streak that they've had. The Seahawks have not been able to step up and physically be able to stand toe-to-toe with them. And that's going to be the first key. There's got to be some physicality. You've got to bring it, especially on the road. And rather than sugarcoating things, some might view this as low-hanging fruit, but these are the 3 keys for me away from just being physical. On offense, you've got to find a way to run the football. And I know it seems elementary, but you are not going to go into Santa Clara and beat the 49ers if Geno Smith is throwing the ball 45-plus times. It's not going to happen. They have got to get Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet established. They've got to be able to establish the line of scrimmage a little bit. And for goodness sakes, Ryan Grubb, run more than 2 play-action passes. Please, I'm begging you. Geno Smith is a fantastic play-action passer. Let the run game set that up under center. On defense, find a way to get Christian McCaffrey to the ground and don't let him break tackles and handle your run fits. Very elementary stuff, but they did much better in the Rams game. Ernest Jones has been a really nice addition on that front. Can the rookie Tyrese Knight step in and do a better job than what Tyrell Dodson was doing? If he can, and they can somewhat slow down that run game, I feel like the pass rush might be able to get after Brock Purdy a little more than what they have in past games. And maybe the most important key here, stop turning the ball over on special teams. I can't remember the last time these 2 teams played that Seattle didn't have at least 1 special teams turnover. Laviska Shenault, now he made up for it somewhat with a kick return for a touchdown in that first matchup, but he fumbled the ball and San Francisco got points off of that in the first half. DJ Dallas, I know it was offense, but they ran an inexplicable play a few years ago where he threw the ball and shot-putted it right into Charvarius Ward's hands for an interception in the red zone. Travis Homer fumbled. I mean, I could keep going. The special teams plays that have gone awry for the Seahawks, they have got to be perfect in that regard. You cannot give the 49ers free possessions off of special teams. If they can do those 3 things, they were able to make last game somewhat interesting late. If you can clean up those issues, you have a chance to win this football game.
Well, the 49ers have been bad on special teams. So if the Seattle Seahawks want to help the 49ers by being even worse than the Niners, then I'd say that the ending result for this game should be a win for the 49ers. They've found different ways to either lose games or make games closer than they had to be. I think including that Seattle game where you had that big kickoff return for a touchdown and it started to feel like, man, his momentum started to change a little bit in Seattle's favor. And we've seen that in previous games where the 49ers had 10-point leads, double-digit leads, and they blew it. And they tried to do it again against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is a team that is definitely suspect on special teams. But, again, if Seattle wants to help them and be equally as bad or worse, 49er fans definitely won't complain.
I think you touched on something really big too, Corbin. And in some of these games where the 49ers gave them away late, I think first of all, you do have to match the 49ers physicality. And if you are able to match the 49ers physicality, and maybe you don't bully the Niners around or anything like that for 3 quarters, 3.5 quarters, but the 49ers have shown that they might get a little tired at the end. And if you keep matching that intensity, you can maybe find a way to pull that out at the end. We've seen it happen in Super Bowls. We've seen it happen multiple times this year against both division opponents, the Cardinals and the Los Angeles Rams, where the 49ers had 10-point leads. And it was all I was talking about on Twitter as the Niners were playing the Seahawks is like, hey, you can't lose a 10-point lead if you don't go up 10 points first. And it's exactly what the 49ers look like they were maybe trying to do against the Seahawks. So if you can hang in there against the 49ers, they've shown that maybe they will give it up late. So I think that's a huge one, Corbin, and I think you nailed it. Aside from that, Croc, what's the path for the 49ers?
I think always you can kind of point to taking the ball away, but I would say no blown assignments on the back end. Again, this is a team where if you can kind of stifle the run game, you're going to have Geno Smith throw. But Geno can definitely take advantage of poor secondary or, guys dropping in coverage. He'll throw some really nice balls. So you can't just give him things that would definitely help keep the Seahawks around in this game. So I'd say that back end, you got a lot of young players. I think they contributed to taking the ball away in the first game. Ronaldo Green had an interception. Malik Mustafa had an interception. 2 rookies making impactful plays, but we know with young guys sometimes it can quickly go the opposite way. So I would say no blown assignments on the back end by those young players.
It's a great one. A good old-fashioned bad special teams off is what's ensuing, it looks like, in this week. Do you have any predictions? Do you want to save predictions, Corbin, for another episode? Do you want to lay on us what you think is going to happen now that you laid out how it should happen in a Seahawks win?
Well, I'm not going to give a score prediction till my Friday show, as I always do. But where's the spread at? Because I have seen it change a couple times already this week.
6.5 right now. The Niners are favored according to FanDuel.
I'm going to go with the Seahawks covering that. I'm not necessarily predicting they're going to win this game, but look, Seattle was able to get back in the game last time these two teams played, and I do think desperation's got to kick in at some point. And if this team can just stop shooting themselves in the foot, I mean, they have beaten themselves as much as other teams have beaten them. If they can play a clean football game, I still think that this is a team that can be dangerous in the second half of the season, but they have to go out and they have to prove it. So, divisional game. Mike McDonald's had an entire extra week here to try to get everything cleaned up a little bit. I'm really curious to see what Seattle looks like, but I think they're going to keep this game close. Now, whether they win it or not, I'll let my listeners know on our Blue Friday show.
And yeah, and by the way, we talked about DK Metcalf, Abraham Lucas, some guys that are banged up for the Seahawks, the 49ers. Christian McCaffrey still has to now make it through another week after his first week back and his injury. Nick Bosa, George Kittle, 2 really important players to the 49ers on the injury list as well. And looks like they're probably going to be able to play, but they might not be out there at 100% right now too. So those are also huge keys for this game that we're going to have to keep tabs on through the rest of the week. Corbin, it's always a pleasure chatting with you. And who knows, maybe we'll get another third installment of Seahawks 49ers, but the way this season's shaping up, I don't know if any more than one team is going to get out of the West. And I think you got to win the West to get into the playoffs. That's what I've been telling my Locked On 49ers listeners. So this might be the end of it for Niners Seahawks in the 2024 season. Always a pleasure. Thanks to all the listeners out there. Make sure you subscribe to Corbin and Locked On Seahawks, as well as Locked On 49ers, bringing you content daily here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And we'll be back with you next time right here, Locked On 49ers and Locked On Seahawks.